But the apathy worries me a lot here in Oklahoma. So we're looking at a situation here where we have a $6.8 billion roughly state budget, and 46 of the 78 state agencies that are funded by that budget are either at a standstill budget, which means, of course, they're falling farther behind because, you know, costs are increasing, or they've been cut. And particularly egregious, of course, or near and dear to my heart at least, is public education, because we all know what the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs and some of the, you know, the 1% crowd really wants to do with public education. First, they of course want to destroy the teachers' unions, and then secondly, they don't much care if a lot of the average kids in this state, or rank and file kids, middle class kids, get educated or not. That's just the reality of it. I'm hoping that particularly in some more modest areas of the metropolitan areas and in some of the rural areas, that people are awakening to the fact that, oh my gosh, our class sizes are exploding. It's getting tougher and tougher to get the band across a couple of counties to a competition. Who knows what we're going to do with our athletic programs, some of those kinds of things. When we have 40, 50, 60 kids in a classroom, the nightmare scenario is created. And there are very few districts that can do what Jinx did. You see what Jinx did? Jinx raised $1.1 million privately to keep their class sizes at a manageable level. Well, you know, good for them and good for those kids over there. But I'm telling you what, that's pretty tough to do in Tulsa Center or Oklahoma City Center, you know? So what about all the other, do we not care suddenly about all these other kids that are out there? It's amazing to me that this legislature would talk about cutting taxes and come within an eyelash really of doing it. I would have bet on Monday, heading into the last week of the session, that some kind of a tax cut, the Republicans would find a way to get together and ram some kind of a tax cut through. But they're doing that at the same time that they're destroying these core, vital services here in Oklahoma. And they're talking about borrowing more and more money for repairs and infrastructure. Now, where's the sense in that? You know, Oklahoma, depending on whose number you use and whether you consider all the debt liability that eventually accrued to the taxpayers in Oklahoma, we're somewhere between $2 billion and about $15 billion in the hole in this state. That's just amazing. And you look at the capital, $150, $160 million needed to bring it back to just modest levels. It's falling down. We have parts, as you know, if you've been there are parts that are roped off and fenced off and because the facade's falling off. And, you know, we've been told on good authority, don't drink water out of the water fountain in the Capitol building. You still have those old systems that date back to early statehood in there. And they want to borrow the money, or wanted to, and probably will try again next year, to borrow the money to pay for repairs that ought to be part of the ongoing taxes that we pay. I mean, that really should be one of those pay-as-you-go. What happened to those great conservative Republicans who insisted all these years about pay-as-you-go, and the Democrats are big spending, wild-eyed, liberals who are constantly running us all into debt? Well, which begs another question. What the heck happened to this great push to address corporate welfare in this session? Yeah. Tax expenditures. We spend roughly, almost as much. We have almost as much in tax credits, giveaways, expenditures, whatever you want to call them, corporate welfare, and there are some individual ones there too. Almost equal to the total amount of the state budget. Billions of dollars don't create a single job, but the minute you talk about rolling some of those back, the special interests kick into overdrive. And even a conservative Republican, now he's a mainstream Republican, he's not one of the crazies, David Dank, who worked his heart out really on this issue and identified billions of dollars that could be cut, couldn't get a thing through the legislature this session. So we continue to this reverse Robin Hood scheme of funneling our tax dollars to the wealthiest 1%. At the same time, we're talking about cutting income taxes so that they disproportionately benefit. You have to think about who is bankrolling a lot of the Republican. Republicans have always been anti-union. I mean, this is an obvious point. But now that you have so much Koch brother, Alec et al. Involvement in Oklahoma politics, as well as other states, obviously, through the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, which is a front group for the Koch brothers and for a lot of those organizations. They don't want people who will work with you. They want nothing short of the destruction of OEA and OPEA. Because in their view, the public employee unions are sort of the last great bastions of Democratic Party support left. And they're doing all that they can to destroy those. The OEA is going to be, I am convinced, a much stronger, much more assertive organization as a result of this. So the people at OCPA and the state chamber and so forth, they recognize this sea change. And they're afraid that OEA is going to get the teachers marching around the Capitol again. In the walls of Jericho are going to come So the one way that they can control that is by making sure that any Republicans who are elected with their money are also not getting money from OEA. I think there are signs that people in Oklahoma are beginning to get it, and maybe this income tax battle this session is the kind of thing that is beginning to get people's attention. When a Jinx has to raise $1.1 million to try to keep the class sizes reasonable there, when Tulsa's looking at having to eliminate 75 additional teaching positions, across the board, it's an incredible nightmare in this state. And people are beginning to understand that this social contract that we've had for generations, where we pool our resources and we do what's right by our kids and by our seniors and by our kids who are in the child welfare system, those things are all in peril. It's amazing to me how you can, wrap yourself in the flag and thump your Bible and then be so uncaring about the least among you. I don't understand that at all. And I think that's part of the message that the Democrats have to continue to pound. We care about all people. We're not, we're here, what's the old saying? We're here to give a hand up to people who need it, not a handout. We're here to take care of children in the dawn of their lives and seniors in the dusk. And everybody else, you're pretty much on your own, but we want to make sure that everybody has an equal opportunity to share in the American dream. And there are folks who don't care about that and have been very successful winning politically on the other side. Because on the one hand, you have a group that is concerned about Oklahoma's image outside the state because they would like to attract certain new investment into Oklahoma. They want to see growth because it benefits them, clearly. On the other hand, this group wants to control things too. They really sort of want Oklahoma to remain they want it to be more prosperous, but they want it to be small enough that they can control it. So they kind of walk a fine line here. Interestingly enough, while the state chamber and Fred Morgan were gung-ho by all accounts for the tax cut, the local chambers were not. The Tulsa chamber was saying, we're not clamoring for this. The Oklahoma City chamber wasn't clamoring for it either. So there's even that division there, among the powers that be, on those kinds of issues too. We're working hard to get teachers engaged with the Observer because they really need to know what they're doing to them at 23rd and Lincoln because it's dramatic and it's quite frightening for the future of public education in this state. I can't tell you the number of educators who have told me, well, you know, I just can't vote for Democrats because I can't be with them on the social issues. And I said, what are you talking about? Obviously, they're hearing from their pulpits that you can't be a Christian and be a Democrat. And it all seems to tie around abortion. Well, you know, if they do much more with abortion, they're going to run out of things to do with that issue. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do next. They continue to, you know, personhood, my God, you know, we could talk about that till we're blue in the face. But I said, guys, you are being played. This is not the issue of the day. This is not what's really important. You are voting against your own self-interest. And Frosty and I have always laughed. You know, if you're a public school teacher and you get up and you vote Republican, if you vote Republican, you might as well get up every day and just shoot yourself in both feet. and unfortunately, a lot of times it really makes the people that I'm engaging in conversation angry, and the conversation is over as far as they're concerned because you're sort of challenging their core value that they're comfortable with. But the Observer, at least, I think, helps to challenge that conventional wisdom that unfortunately is out there. And again, I think the corporates put a stop to that. I think they were finally successful. And, you know, let me tell you, the medical community was really exercised about that. And so they were very involved in that as well. And they finally were able to put together a coalition that just was able to squeeze the crackpot caucus over into a corner. And the crazies shot themselves in the foot because Kevin Calvi, who's a name that will resonate with some people in this room, you know, threatened the legislature that a procedural vote or against allowing personhood to come up for a vote on the floor would be considered a pro-abortion vote. And that's the way the information would be disseminated by this crowd. Well, G.W. Shannon, in his defense, ripped Calvi publicly and said, I will not deal with you ever again, and this is wrong, and called him out on it. And they sort of, Tony Lallinger's group and all, they sort of had to tuck their tails and come back with their hats in hand and beg forgiveness on that deal. I still think that was one of the more extraordinary moments of the session because this was, it was on the verge. Everybody was waiting, and the Republicans kept going back into caucus, and trying to figure out how they could make this work. And the anti-abortion crowd was going to have a big news conference to talk about this very thing. And Paul Blair is one of those group. And since it was still in flux, they kept postponing the press conference, and finally announced that they would have the press conference after the House session concluded. So all the doors swing open to the gallery at the House of Representatives, and in comes the crowd that was going to have this press conference demanding a vote on personhood and why this is a good thing for Oklahoma. All of them were middle-aged and older white men. Some were in collars. I just thought, could you ask for a more stark, group to see? I mean, if you're a woman in this state, if you needed any more explanation about what was going on, here was the group, right here. Pictures speak louder than words sometimes.